again, time for an Israel update, and it is Hanokian coming from a not very quiet neighborhood today, buddy.
No. Hey, Mike, how you doing? Just
I
to
was
give
fine
everyone a
until I
heads
woke
up.
up and looked at my phone, and it keeps going off on it over and over and over again, the red alert from Israel, and I've got the alarm on right now, so as we go through the program, if people hear that little dinging in the back, that's rocket attacks.
That's another rocket.
Yeah.
Just first of all, okay, just a quick heads up to everybody. They've raised the alert status here in Modi'in. No rockets have been fired towards us. They've gotten as close to Tel Aviv, and in the background, I can hear the boom of the Iron Dome intercepting those.
Great.
Should we get the alert here in Modi'in, I will put the computer down and come back 10 minutes later. And, okay. First of all, we knew that this was happening. We knew this was going to happen. Yesterday, for a variety of reasons, which I won't go into, I had to do quite a bit of traveling between here and Tel Aviv. I wasn't working. Unfortunately, this is a week when I only have 2 days of guiding. By the way, I realize I'm hopping from thing to thing, but I experienced something recently that you and I have experienced and commented to each other. There are a lot of tourists in Israel right now. You very rarely hear English spoken.
Wow.
Holland had some kind of bank holiday, so we had a number of people from the Netherlands. I hear and see the flags, Romanian, Russian, Nigerian, you name it, people from all over.
Wow.
I just don't hear. I can't engage people in English because they don't speak it. But anyway,
wow.
Israel altered the sequence of events. Last week, I said fairly disparagingly that we have this constant situation where it's in a schoolyard and one guy punches the other and the other punches him back. And then they're standing there. It's kind of like, you start something. No, you start something. No, you start something. No, okay. So Israel was seemingly quiet for a week.
Yeah.
And then we struck back, killed 3 senior leaders who were involved in terrorism for years, destroyed a number. Now, this is the Islamic Jihad faction in Gaza, which is not the largest. Islamic Jihad is Iran's proxy in Gaza. Just to give people a sense of what's going on, this is part of the ongoing war that we fight against the Iranian proxies. And what's fascinating, of course, is the whole world gets its undies up in a knot when Israel does something. The fact that Jews can be slaughtered and rammed down in the streets and shot, that's seemingly okay. By the way, there was something that I saw. I don't often burst out into tears when I see little news clips. But recently, when Lucy D, may Hashem avenge, and our security forces avenge her blood, she and her 2 daughters were killed. A number of her organs were transplanted, and there was a little video clip of 2 of her daughters listening with a stethoscope to the woman who received her heart. And I was a mess to be able to hear their deceased mother's heart beating. Now, let's keep terrorism in perspective. Last week, we had 1 day of 104 rockets. The IDF adjusted the Iron Dome. There was a little tweak in there. It wasn't as effective because it's normally over 90% effective. There was no need 3-4 days later to assume that Israel was still being hit by rockets. And I'm starting to get these notes. I just answered one in a and even for me, in a fairly sharp manner. You know, and it's funny because something just came up in memories in Facebook, and I so relate to it. And it said the following, and this should be my slogan: "May the bridges that I burn light the way." Because this person had posted a thing about, it was a news report where Netanyahu said, "We are prepared for a multi-front war against Iran."
Oh, yeah.
Anyone who knows anything about Israel knows that we've been doing this for years.
Hmm.
There is not an imminent danger right now of a multi-front war breaking out. So there's like, so I guess we shouldn't come to Israel now. And this is really where I take off the gloves.
Yeah.
And, remember, that kinder, gentler Hanoch, that was 15 minutes about 3 years ago. So that's not going to happen. Let's keep things in perspective. I always give the example of Chicago. I'm not going to give the example of Chicago. I'm going to give the example of Dallas. I've spoken in Dallas, and I'm going to the Republic of Texas. And often when I travel in America, I go to malls, particularly outlet malls.
Yeah.
So should I no longer do that in America because people were killed in Dallas?
Yeah.
Another example.
Yeah. If you put the perspective here, Hanok, Israel is still, in my opinion, one of the safest places to be in the world.
There's no doubt. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it.
I will choose Israel over Johannesburg, over Chicago any day of the week, over San Francisco.
New York.
Start naming countries. Start naming.
But it's not. But it's not even just the big cities. In April, people were killed in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
I am in July. I am flying into Louisville. Should I not go there? I mean, and seriously, I mean, Baruch Hashem, we have not had that many fatalities.
Yeah.
Each and every one is a tremendous loss and pain to our soul. But keep things in perspective. And the other thing is, you and I, in our various speaking and getting around, we've come across a lot of people who feel that they are part of Israel, one way or the other. How they describe that theologically or whatever is irrelevant for this program. So you're part of Israel, and Israel's the most important thing to you, but you want to stay home wrapped in bubble wrap because you think you might get a scratch here in Israel.
Well,
I'm sorry.
that
doesn't fly with us.
This is where I go to the statement I've used many times. The safest place to be is in the center of Hashem's will.
Absolutely.
I mean, and if that's Israel, if that's the outlet mall in Allen, Texas, no matter where it is, the safest place to be is in the center of his will. I would rather lose my life in the center of his will than live my life outside of his will. Period.
In the early 2000s, you were one of those handful of very small handful tour leaders that brought people to Israel in the middle of what you and I know of as the Oslo War, what others refer to as the Second Intifada. That's when buses were getting blown up, pizza shops were getting blown up.
Oh, yeah.
That's when my daughter Ayala, your biggest fan here in Israel. Well, I'm close, but she's number one.
Yeah, and she's
was
much
here
nicer
and
and
in
kinder and
she studied it in Jerusalem for 2 years at an advanced yeshiva for women. Yeah. And honestly, I was nervous, and I expressed that in a post at the time. And a buddy of mine said something like, "Hey, you can't keep your kids, wrapped in, bubble wrapper and swaddled in a blanket." Now, it would have meant more to me if this is someone who had ever gotten married and had children of his own,
Yeah.
And I know I sound a little snarky now, but in other words, don't be so glib with someone else's life or safety.
Well, yeah.
But if it's okay for a 7 million Israeli Jews to be here, people can certainly visit for 12 days.
Going back to my statement of the center of God's will, um, I was there right after the Sbarro Pizzeria bombing.
That's right.
I went over there to where that building is now, a wonderful bakery. But I was there I saw where the windows had been blown out and everything. There's a fascinating story because the Intifada, Oslo Wars began when Ariel Sharon walked up on the Temple Mount at Rosh Hashanah in the year 2000. So Sbarro, as it is in Israel, to quote Leah Goldsmith, they destroy, we rebuild. You guys don't put up a memorial. You don't, though there are memorials all over Israel, but the greatest memorial that you can do is to rebuild something. And so Sbarro Pizzeria did that. They scheduled a grand opening and had the date was all figured out. They called New York and asked for a representative from Sbarro Pizzeria to come to the grand opening. And of course, this is in the midst of the Oslo Wars, the Intifada, and they declined. Well, there's another rocket. The interesting thing is that Sbarro Pizzeria was in one of the World Trade Centers, and the date of the grand opening was September 11, 2001. If that person had have accepted the invitation for the grand opening, and it would have been standing there off of Ben Yehuda Street, Jaffa Street in Jerusalem, he would be alive to tell about it today.
Yeah, this idea of, and again, we had people pull out of our tour a few years ago when former President Trump, recognized Jerusalem as the capital. And I remember their note saying, there will obviously be unrest and we don't think it's safe.
Yeah, whatever.
I remember back to 2015 when someone pulled out of our tour. I'm not going to mention the name or even the radio station that she's affiliated with and still does a program for, but she pulled out of our tour because she had been convinced that the economy was about to collapse and she didn't want to have any debt on her credit card. That was 8 years ago. Next week, we get to celebrate the 56th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. Rabbi Glick is calling for World Zion Day. I mean, so much is going on. And, again, I say this all the time now. Hashem is sitting there kind of, back and forth, kind of a rocking chair, eating boiled peanuts saying, is you is or is you ain't my constituency? Are you guys in or you're out?
56 years. I mean,
It's
just
amazing.
doesn't hardly seem possible. I was thinking back again of 75 years since Hashem arose and said, yes, I did mean what I said. Can a nation
Absolutely.
be born in a day? I was talking with someone just this past week. Of course, I was speaking on this at Life Assembly, as I normally say something about Israel every week. But the absolute miraculous. Can a nation be born in a day? Can a city that's divided be brought back together? I was teaching on the vision of the Valley of Dry Bones. And it's not Hanok, if we go back to Ezekiel chapter 37, it's not just that it would have been one thing if you had seen a vision of dead bodies.
Yeah.
You know, can these bodies live? Well, maybe there's some life somewhere out there. I don't know. I haven't examined every body, and so
Yeah.
I kind of wrapped this in together with for people and said, you know, if you bring a body into an emergency room, the everybody in the whole emergency room jumps to you know, in almost a controlled panic, you know, trying to resuscitate. And let's check let's see if there's any hope of life at all. But if I was to wheel a skeleton in
That's right.
of a dried out in the desert skeleton into an emergency room and said, "Hey, could I get some help over here?" Nobody would lift a hand. They'd all
Yeah.
look at you like, "What are you,
Beyond
stupid or
belief.
something?"
It's
There's
beyond
there's no
belief.
way that this
Absolutely.
thing can live, you know. But so when Ezekiel was shown that vision, it is remarkable. They used dry, not just bones, dry
Right.
bones.
Yeah.
And what is being
It's
celebrated
remarkable.
in Israel on a weekly basis now, and a daily basis. You know, you guys, I thought about this morning, Hanok. What is it like waking up every morning knowing that you have the world hates you?
Okay. That's a great question. And surprisingly, I actually get that question fairly often.
Okay, well, I
Having
wasn't the
grown
first.
up, having grown up where I did
Yeah,
as a Jew and an Irish Catholic, I actually am better psychologically prepared for knowing that the world hates me and wants to kill me than most Israelis that have grown up, certainly that have come to age in the last 20 to 25 years since Shimon Peres, Oslo, and all that nonsense. Actually, Oslo is now 30 years since the insanity of Oslo began.
yeah,
Okay, so having said that, I get into conversations on these day tours that I do with Tourist Israel with Europeans. Europeans have a very you know, it's interesting. Americans on the day tours see all these Israelis with automatic weapons and want to know how easy it is to own a gun here, which it's not. That's what Americans are focused on. The Europeans
yeah,
like can't understand and years ago when I used to guide in the Western Wall tunnels, this is years ago, at the very end of my tour, I spoke about how, you know, and you're in Jerusalem, the reunited capital, the eternal capital of the people of Israel, blah, 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 blah. Afterwards, a woman, and of course she had a German accent, I love this, said to me, "I resent that you said that." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, because you shouldn't have said that." I said, "What I said was," and again, I repeated, Jerusalem. She said, "Well, it's not your capital." I said, "It most certainly is." She said, "No, it's not. We don't recognize it." And I said, "Understand something." And then there's a whole crowd, you know, all the other 30 people that crowded around. It's good. And I'm like, you know, like I'm ready to do a sidekick, you know, to her head. But I said, "Listen, what Europe, because at first I said, may I ask what country you're from?" She said, Europe. I said, okay, so you're from, and then I did my Joey Tribbiani, you know, air quotes. Oh, you're from Europe. I said, okay, we do not care what Europeans think of the modern state of Israel. You cannot deal with the fact that Jews, A, are still alive.
yeah.
She really flushed. And B, that we have our own country and we couldn't care less. And we are strong enough that we could crush any of your countries in Europe. And besides that, as I turned to leave, because I had to start walking the group back, and I said, picture it this way. You've exchanged 6 million Jews for 25 million Muslims. So how's that been working out for you guys? And then I walked away.
You know, how many times have you actually read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People?
I've heard the title. I've heard the
Okay,
title, but no, you know, and the reality is, like, someone asked me, this was bizarre. this guy was from Holland, Netherlands, and he said to me, he said, I often wonder why are, like in Europe, why are so many Jews involved in or were involved in working as peddlers or merchants or diamond dealers or money changers? And I said, it's actually pretty simple. You Christian Europeans, those were the only fields that you allowed us to go into.
Oh,
And he's like, I never thought of it that way.
interesting. Interesting.
Anyway,
Yeah, I know that,
anyway,
let me throw this thing. I mean, I understand your frustration. Okay. The frustration over I, I feel it on a different level than you do. I cannot feel it at your level. I sit here with my phone and get angry every time that I see another notification come up. But to hear the actual explosions, and again, we continue to plan our Connect Israel tour. We go to every length possible for safety with people. I've never had anyone in the probably somewhere around, I don't remember how many tours I've actually led or co-led, but I've never had a single person at the end of the tour say to me, I did not feel safe here.
yeah,
And that's our
without a
goal.
doubt.
I mean, not, we're talking hundreds of people, and
And
no, not a single one has ever said that they felt unsafe in any way. So that's our goal, and so
and this
people
is
should not
this
allow the
is
news to
and
figure
this
into
is
this.
cyclical. This is
It is,
cyclical.
it is. Yeah, no doubt about that. It truly is. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no. So it's a sense people hear about this, and I can give you an analogy to many years ago. I lived in Rego Park, Queens, the borough of Queens. That was at a time in the early 80s where there were a lot of drive-by shootings in Jamaica, Queens. Queens is 26 distinct neighborhoods. They each have a name and a different zip code. So people would say to me, like, do you hear the gunfire at night? That's like if someone is robbed in Charlotte, do you hear it in Franklin? No. It's just people don't have a perspective, and you don't hear of tourists being killed.
No.
You don't hear, God forbid, of horrific numbers of casualties, but you do hear of rockets. In that sense, that's why we've developed the Iron Dome system to protect our citizens, because we've got 7 million Jews who get up every morning and go to work and go to school and take care of their elderly parents and get married and go to clubs and go to restaurants. We live. Tomorrow, I've got a tour in Jerusalem
No.
all day, 8.5 hours. I walk them into a zombie haze.
Yeah.
And it's I don't understand people again when you can go into a mall near Dallas and be killed. Why on earth would you think that it would be dangerous to be in Israel?
Well,
I mean, I just, you know,
this basically comes down to this, Sanoke, that it's where the news leads people. Hey,
sure.
whatever. I look at the people. I had someone sign up for the tour the other day. Um, we're very, very close to our limit, our self-imposed limit, which is the reason for our self-imposed limit of around 25 or so, is because we don't want that hurried zoo experience. I don't want people to feel like they're a bunch of circus monkeys in trying to go from place to place. And so that's why we limit the people. But I was talking with someone the other day, and she said, you know, she'd been thinking about it, and walked into somewhere, and somebody looked at her and said, you know, you need to go to Israel. And she went, yeah, I do. And she made that, you know, it
It's
was the
great.
next day that she sent in or that day actually that she sent the registration in. And I said to her once again, a statement that you and I have not talked about it in a long time. It's not just that you need to see Israel, but Israel needs to see you.
Yeah.
You know, why is it that, friend BB and Renee you know, Priscilla and a whole list of other people that have been on connect after connect after connect. It's like, well, didn't you see the same things? Yeah, but didn't you see the same people? Yes, and they saw us. And they see these people coming back, and no one should take it for granted that the Israelis that we meet, they see these people coming back and over and over again. What I'm told as I've in conversations with them, you know, there is sometimes I know that for you, it's got to happen. For others, you know, you have a down day, and you see someone that's come back for the second or third time, and it's like you gain strength. When I was there, you know, during the Intifada, Hanok, it was not unusual for someone to walk across the street, an Israeli. I had this happen on King George. Uh, Someone walked across the street to our group and began hugging everybody, and crying.
Just
Thank
for
you.
being
You're
for
our
being there.
heroes. Our
Yeah.
hero, what? We're over here eating ice cream, and we're not the heroes. You're here staying. No, you're our heroes. We gain strength from you, and that happened to us over and over and over again.
Yeah. It again, if you look at here it is, you had two Jews and another people killed in Tunisia last night.
Wow, I didn't
You
even
know,
get
it's just it's just you need to keep perspective, and you need to say, you need to know that this is the bracha, the blessing that Rav Kahana gave his children. May you always know the difference between what's important and what's not.
yeah.
And those people who are, you know, back and forth, like, oh, so Netanyahu mentioned that Israel is prepared to fight a multi-front war. First of all, you expect him to say things like that because that's what the prime minister does. But anyone who knows anything about Israel knows that we've been working on this for years.
Yeah.
We've been training to fight on several fronts simultaneously. We've been interdicting, I love that word, missile shipments from Iran through Syria for years, Lebanon for years. There's no surprises here, kids.
Hmm.
I mean, listen, in 2005, Israel unilaterally withdrew 9,000 people from their homes in the Gaza Strip. In those 18 years, Hamas and its associates have fired over 30,000 rockets and missiles at us when they could have been providing for their population. They were independent. Gaza borders on the Mediterranean Sea. They could have been building a wonderful society. They don't want to do that because they have a bloodlust. They want to kill Jews. When they say, for instance, the on the 14th of May is Nakba Day, the catastrophe, as the Arabs call it. Well, you know what? They have to realize that you kill Jews, you try to kill Jews, you're going to pay a price. You're going to pay a price. And when they say that they're only against the occupation, they're not talking about Judea, Samaria, and Jerusalem. They're talking about every single centimeter of the land of Israel.
You brought up something that I was wondering about. You said May 14th, so I guess this is an obvious. Should be obvious to me, but you know, you go by the Hebrew
Hebrew
calendar, of
date, the
course.
5th of Iyar. Yeah.
Yeah, but the the Palestinians, in order to make this a worldwide event, they go by May 14th.
Yeah, because that was the date on the secular calendar in
Okay.
1948.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day. I mean, I figured the obvious there, but I just wanted to make sure
Sure.
of what that was. You know, we mentioned this before we went on briefly, that it's astounding to me, and I know the so-called plight of the Palestinians, and that, you know, the Arabs that were in Israel prior to the Oslo War specifically, I wasn't over there prior to that time, 67 or whatever. But
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to talk to many of them that I knew in the years 2000 or 98, 99, early 2000. And I got a chance to talk to them after that, the Oslo War began. And they
Yeah.
said, we didn't want to have anything to do with this. This was not our choice. You know, you talk to Christians that were Arab Christians that were in Bethlehem. They said, this was not our choice. We didn't want to have anything to do with this. But it's
Yeah.
instead of taking care of their people, which there's mega money to do so, given to them by Europe, by America, even by Israel, instead of taking care of their people, they always have enough money for more rockets. And
Yeah, it's
it comes
amazing.
down to basically hatred. I
That's
don't
what
think that any of us
that's
can
what they
really,
exist for.
yeah,
That's what they exist for.
the level of hatred. We see a level of hatred in America right now that's being this being ginned up. You know, that pot's being stirred. But that's nothing compared to the hatred that many of the Palestinians have for Israel.
You know, the local Arabs who since 1964 have been referring to themselves now as Palestinians. You know, and by the way, that's such an interesting element because that was the creation of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization. So that's 1964.
Yeah.
That's 3 years before the 67 war. So it's 3 years before Judea, Samaria, Gaza, Sinai, Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights became part of Israel again. Okay, we messed up with Gaza and Sinai, that's obvious. But in other words, what was it they're looking to liberate? They believe that every drop of sand in the land of Israel belongs to them, and every Jew should die.
Yeah. It's no more difficult than that. I mean, you consider that the PLO, the establishment of the PLO, the first time we ever heard about them was in hijacking of airplanes.
Yeah,
Okay, well, that's
that's when they
somebody to
became
have,
famous.
you know, that's somebody to invite for dinner.
That's that, and along with the Munich massacre of the
Yeah,
Olympics of 1972.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
Anyway,
Well, hey, take care of yourself. Be safe.
I certainly will. See y'all soon.